Okay, we're at 3.02, the Stephen Fuller Institute. And, oh, there you are, Dr. Noonan.
I'm moving around on you tonight.
Keeping me on my toes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity tonight to share some information about our enrollment overviews and some projections. I feel like this might be one of the more anticipated presentations that we've had in a while for a number of reasons. Certainly as a City of Falls Church resident who recently had a community event. A lot of questions were, where are all these kids coming from? And why do we have so many students moving into our schools? And I want to preface the presentation this evening with just a little bit of information because I think it's important for not just the school board, but more particularly our community to understand that we are absolutely excited to see what's going on in our community with the addition of students. And we'll share some information about some student growth this year, some anticipated growth over the next couple of years and the like. And the reason that I am particularly excited is that we planned for this. And it's always nice when you plan for something and it kind of comes to fruition. Some of you might remember the long afternoons, evenings, and events as we led up to the building of the new high school, as an example. Wyatt Shields and I worked hand in glove to make sure that we were able to communicate and articulate clearly how the modeling of the economics were going to work to support the payments for the debt service for the high school that would be greater capacity for our secondary students. We have updated not just built a new high school, we have a relatively new middle school. Oak Street Elementary, just over a decade ago, got a big addition as well. One of the first things that I did when I got here 7 years ago was to put a very large addition on at Mount Daniel Elementary School. And just before that, we opened Jesse Thackeray Preschool to take the preschool students off of the Mount Daniel campus and put them onto their own site. So for the last decade and a half, this board, the superintendents previous to me, have truly been planning for what we knew was eventually going to happen, that there would be additional growth in our schools. So with that, I want to just first share my excitement and my enthusiasm for the students that are coming, but I also at the same time want to give you a sense of where we are capacity-wise, because you're going to hear some numbers tonight that might set you back just for a second and say, wow, it really looks like over the next few years we're going to see quite a growth. And so I want to just give you a sense of where we are relative to capacities in buildings. And these capacities that I'll share with you are full utilization rates. So for example, if we fully utilized all the classrooms every period of every day at Jesse Thackeray Preschool, we have a capacity of 100 at JTP. Right now, that gives us room for about 33 students of growth. At Mount Daniel Elementary, we have a capacity of 660, and right now we have the ability to accommodate about 140 more students at Mount Daniel. At Oak Street, our capacity is 750, and I'll share all these data with you as well. 750, so we have a growth opportunity for 172 students at Oak Street. At Henderson, our current capacity is 768, which leaves us room for 127 students. And at Meridian High School, we currently have a capacity of 1,200, but as you'll remember, we did future-proof that building, and on the 4th and the 5th floor, we have an opportunity to build out 6 larger spaces. So the capacity there is really 1,500 if we utilize the entire building to its fullest capacity, which gives us room for about 587 more students. So I think it's important to note that one of the things that never happens is when you see 100 students new to the system, they don't all come to second grade. They really are split across the pre-K-12 continuum, and knowing that we have capacity that can achieve that and can accommodate the growth right now is something that I think is meaningful for the community and planned for. So one might ask, well, when do we start to see some challenges? And we've got a number of different data sets that we can look at over time, but we do start to see some challenges building-wise based on some of the numbers that we currently are utilizing at somewhere around 2040, 2045. And at that point in time, there may need to be some modification to the CIP moving forward. But for the foreseeable future, we are in very good shape. So with that, sort of as a preface to the presentation, I'd love to share with you tonight our work around enrollment overview and projections, not just from the school system and from Weldon Cooper Center, but we're very fortunate this evening to have a guest with us that I'll introduce here in just a second. So let me just begin by saying, each year as we start the budget process, this is something that's a very important moment for us, is to look at what are the projections as we move forward into the future. We have traditionally received for the last 15 years projections from the Weldon Cooper Center. And the Weldon Cooper Center, as you may recall, is the center at the University of Virginia that provides projections to many of the school divisions around the Commonwealth and also to the State Department of Education and to the legislature. In fact, they are the group that state sales tax distribution is based on the data that comes from the Weldon Cooper Center. However, knowing that we have a unique circumstance and situation here in the City of Falls Church with all of the growth that's going on, the school board, thank you very much, along with the general government and city council, along with my partner Wyatt Shields on the general government side, decided to put out an RFP to get a demographer in to help us really sort through what are the numbers going to look like in the foreseeable future for the City of Falls Church schools. And as I think everybody here knows, the Stephen Fuller Institute was selected. And tonight we have Dr. Terry Clower with us. Dr. Clower, thank you for being here. From the Stephen Fuller Institute. He is the director for the Center for Regional Analysis and also is the Northern Virginia Chair and University Professor at the Schar School of Public Policy at George Mason University. So each year, again, these are the first steps in our budget process. So let me start with current enrollment, and you're not going to be able to probably see this on the screen, but I do want to just give you a sense of where we are. We do take enrollment after September 30th, and that is calculated as part of our fall record collection that goes to the State Department of Education. In addition to sending it to the State Department of Education, we also send those data to the Weldon Cooper Center, who then begins to develop our projections. What this chart shows you is a historical enrollment by grade level for FY19 through FY23, as well as the projected and actual enrollment for the school year as of September 30th. The last two columns in this chart on the right show the variance in the actual enrollment with the projections and the variance with the prior actual enrollment. So for example, the projected enrollment for kindergarten this year was 159 students, and we had 160 students enroll. So we were one more than projected and also 27 more than we had in the prior year. Just for the good of the order, kindergarten is the hardest grade level to project because we don't know who's going to be coming in and who's not. But overall, and I think this is the important point that I'd like to share here on this slide, is that the enrollment this year on September 30th was 2,634 students, which is 82 more than we budgeted for last year. So you might remember our budget each year is based on a number of students. We had 82 more students this year than we budgeted for, and we also have, at the same time, 100 more students total. So we have a budgeted number, and then we have the enrollment, and we have 82 more than we budgeted for, but overall 100 more. This chart will share some information that gives you by school some of the enrollment. So if you look at it on the right-hand column, again, you'll see the variance with projection and the variance with prior year actual. The summary numbers to the right, I think, are the most important here. And you'll see that at Oak Street Elementary School, at Mary Ellen Henderson Middle School is where we're seeing some of our largest growth patterns that are beginning to emerge. This is another graphical way of sharing what our data looks like in terms of enrollment from 2001 to this current year. You will see the dip during 2020-21. That is the pandemic years there, and you can see us starting to begin to climb back to pre-pandemic numbers, and likely, based on what we're seeing in the data, an exceeding of those pre-pandemic numbers. So who are the students that we're serving that are coming in? And this is an interesting slide for us because one thing we know is that students that are coming into our system that have needs that are outside of sort of a general education requirement need some extra support, and that is a budgetary item. This particular chart indicates our multi-year history of ESOL students, or ELs, our English learners. The top section is the students who are currently receiving services. The middle section is students who have exited ESOL services, or sometimes referred to as students that are bridging. And then the last section are students who refused or declined to receive ESOL services. So these are parents of students who may already speak English with great ease, read, write, speak, and listen, and maybe came into the country but had enough education in English. So those parents have declined services. But for the students receiving services, the current year, there are 139 students, and that is 15 more than we had the prior year. But still, those numbers are below what we experienced prior to the pandemic. But it's important to know that we have 139 ESOL students. So the next chart is our student population that's broken down a little bit further by some other categories. And I think that these are important to pay attention to. You'll see our economically disadvantaged students, these are students that are considered on free and reduced lunch, has grown by 37% this year. So we're seeing larger pockets of poverty that are playing into the work that we're doing. And we know that poverty is an indicator for some need, whether it's economic support through the free and reduced lunch program, or in many cases, some additional educational need as well. Our students with disabilities has grown by 17 students, which is a 5% growth. Our students with a 504 plan, these are students that have an identified disability that may not necessarily require an IEP. And these students actually with a 504 plan has increased by 27 students across the division, which is 15.6%. Again, you'll see that 12% increase in ESOL students. We saw a decline again in students who are homeschooling. We saw an 8% decline there. And then we did see an increase in students who are paying tuition. And this is separate and apart from those students that are paying tuition at Jessie Thackeray Preschool. So we have we do have 25 students that are currently paying tuition to the City of Falls Church. So here are some prior Weldon Cooper projections that I think are important to kind of look at. Again, these are for information, and any and all information that we collect can really be useful to us. But this chart shows the projection in blue and the actual enrollment in gold for each grade level. The largest gaps between the actual and the projected enrollment were at Oak Street this year, when in past years, the greatest gap has been in kindergarten. Kindergarten, 6th grade, and grade 9 are traditionally where we see students who are new to Falls Church City Public Schools, and that is because those are transition years in our division. So one might ask then, so what is the projection accuracy of these Weldon Cooper Center numbers? And this is just essentially a flat line lying on the 100% mark, showing that the year-over-year projections from Weldon Cooper have been relatively close. And another way of showing it here is by percentage. So last year, there was a difference of 2%. The year before, it was a negative 4%. But the range going back to 2015 is somewhere between 8.6% and negative 4%. But on average, the median is going to be, or not going to get that right. I'm just going to say average. The average is going to be pretty close to about 2.5%. Differential. So it's not terribly off from year to year. But there are some challenges that we'll share with you tonight, of course, with the Weldon Cooper Center's projections. So here are the FY25 and beyond, and this is going to take just a little bit of explanation, not for the board, but more for the community. And that is that each fall, after we have our September 30th data enrollment that we send to the Weldon Cooper Center, they then prepare projections for us as we move forward. Those projections are used for the upcoming budget, And again, we also use those projections as part of our capital planning process to determine whether or not we need to make adjustments to our buildings. The Weldon Cooper Center projections also help us prepare for the state allocations that we're going to see that are going to come through from whether it's the final budget that the governor signs or other dollars that we may get. And the development of those projections use a number of different pieces of information. And the first is birth data, and the second is fall membership data. Birth data comes from the Virginia Center for Health Statistics and is used to project future births. And then the membership data comes from the division and the Virginia Department of Education. So we do work hand in glove with the VDOE to try to determine what our growth projections are going to look like along with those birth data. So when we take a look at the Weldon Cooper Center data, one of the things that you'll see is that each grade level has what's called a grade level progression ratio. And this is a little wonky, if you're into statistics, for example, you might enjoy this a lot. But essentially what these ratios begin to do is begin to capture enrollment patterns of cohorts over time as students move from grade to grade. But since this fluctuates each year, Weldon Cooper uses 3 sets of data for their projections. And it's 1 year, 1 year from the most recent year, and then 3 years based on a 5-year average. And that's sort of the way that they begin to look at those progressions. But the calculation is developed by dividing the number of students in a specific grade by the number of students from the previous grade in the prior year. So if a second grade student population, for example, has 100 students, it's then divided by the number of students in first grade. So if you have 100 students in first grade and 100 students in second grade, your ratio is going to be 1, essentially. And that ratio, if it's 1, is great. If it's greater than 1, that means to us that, or greater than 100%, that means to us that we have more students that are moving into that grade than we had the prior year. If that ratio is less than 1 or showing less than 100%, it means that we have fewer students moving in from that prior year. So these data in this chart indicate kind of where we are in terms of ratio progressions. And if you look at the very bottom, you will see by grade level kind of what our projection ratios look like. So remember, 100% is sort of a 1-to-1 ratio. And knowing that in kindergarten we're at 122%, first grade 110, second 104, you can look at them all the way across. And we don't get to below 100 until we get to 10th grade and 11th grade, and then 12th grade we jump back up to over 100, which means that in every grade level this last year we grew, with the exception of grades 10 and 11. So those are important data for us to consider as we think about our projections for the future. The next is birth rates. And Northern Virginia, I think there's been a lot of press about this recently. And one of the things that we have seen in the press and otherwise is that in Northern Virginia, birth rates have dropped over the recent years. And even though birth rates have rebounded from 21 and 22, birth rates are still lower than they were a few years ago. Weldon Cooper Center did note that while Falls Church is one of the more attractive areas in Northern Virginia to live, I would suggest the best place to live in Northern Virginia, lower birth rates will certainly still cause enrollment to decline based on their data. And here is a graphical representation of what that looks like for Falls Church specifically relative to neighboring jurisdictions. So we're the red line, and the jurisdictions around us are the blue line. So you see that we are a little bit above what's happening around us as well. But the thing that Weldon Cooper fails to recognize in their presentation of the data is the impact of local changes in our housing market. And this is where we're really excited to have a demographer help us. Someone who can come in and really look at what our housing stock is going to look like for the future and really give us a sense of the direction that we need to head. Because I don't think, based on the information that is up here, for example, that currently under construction at West Falls, we have 247 units for sale in condominiums, and approximately 400 units of multifamily traditional and micro apartments. The Broad and Washington project includes multifamily rental apartments, and there's 339 units there. And Founders Row 2, when it's completed, will have 280 multifamily rental apartments. Those are not included in the Weldon Cooper Center's data, and these are really important projects. And again, I want to just reiterate, we've planned for this, we're ready for it, but at the same time, the challenge for us will be not the space. The challenge will be for us getting people to fill the positions and making sure that we have the adequate budget and sufficient, more than sufficient, but adequate budget to be able to do the work that needs to be done in schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Clower from the Weldon Cooper Center for his comments and some further insight about how things are looking as we move towards the future. So, Dr. Clower, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a head right there.
Very good. Thank you, Superintendent Noonan. Thank you very much for having us come in, and I'm not at the Weldon Cooper Center, but I'll be happy to send them a bill for my time tonight. So that'll be fine. No. So just real quickly, I'm not going to spend much time. The Stephen Fuller Institute, you've heard of that, and then if you've been around for a while, you've heard of the Center for Regional Analysis, and we work kind of 2 units, and that's all been, I'm not even sure it could be called merger, but we are 2 units within the same. CRA takes a little bit broader view than just the region, but as you know, we've been around for a long time, and we look forward to doing these kind of projects, working with local governments. I want to call out a couple of things. So one is that much of the work that you're seeing being reported here was done by my colleague Keith Waters, Dr. Keith Waters. He's assistant director. When it came to a choice, I could either teach his class until 10 o'clock tonight or come have an enjoyable conversation with you folks. So guess what? Keith's teaching. The other is I want to publicly acknowledge the support and my admiration for Kristen Michael, who we've been working together on this, lots of hours spent on the phone, going through the data. The other thing I'll tell you is I have done quite a number of these kind of projections for school districts, mostly in Texas, where I come from, and I have never worked with a school district that has the level of detailed data available. It's a trove. It has been, and now I'm not saying you're getting a discount because of that, but I am going to say that it has been, the data that you have available allow you to do planning that is very much at the upper ends of abilities that I see in other school districts. So congratulations on that. Now let's just dig right on into it. I'm sorry, I go back on one here. Our key thing that we're wanting to do here, just a little bit different, as your superintendent suggested, is that in a place where you have a relatively stable population, of course, let's face it, you're landlocked, the big issue is what's happening with housing development. And of course, that's a part of what we do. We work with housing developers, the Northern Virginia Association of Realtors and others. But what we wanted to do in this exercise, and this is being done for the city as well as the school district, is to look at the new housing, basically figure out what's that going to do in terms of housing supply, what population change, and then, of course, the contribution rates of those houses that we see coming in. And a few of these were mentioned in the superintendent's presentation, where you're looking at what these folks are going to get and some of these projects. So we actually talked to the developers about when these projects are actually going to come in line. And of course, there's still projections on it. It's very interesting to look at the little bit of the dynamics, but you have some big projects coming on board. And we're expecting, so for example, the Founders Row will be at their stabilized growth at about 18 months or something like that. Well, a couple of things we're doing. When we're looking at condo properties, we're basically assuming that they are occupied the day they are available on the marketplace, because we, as you well know, we have a very tight, historically low inventory of homes for sale in this entire region, not just here. In Falls Church, the last number I have is you take all the homes on the market and they could be sold at the rate of sales in about 6 days. The old tradition in real estate is a balanced market is 4 months. So we just assume that if something comes on the market, it's sold immediately. What we hear from the apartment developers is if you have a fairly large apartment complex, that can take 12 to 18 months to get in because of the pace they do about qualifying people to get in and do them. And so we have allowed for that at the pace of development. Now, in the out years, we looked at different types of developments. So single family, well, guess what? You're not going to get much more of that. It's just a few dribs and drabs here or there, a few that come up that might be where a larger lot gets split out or something like that. The condos, we take those out as we note, and then townhomes, the city planning department is projecting that they're expecting about 6 townhome units in a year. Now, this does not include anything that might happen in the future about converting existing office spaces and commercial spaces into other uses like residential. I know there is a whole lot being talked about in this region, and we do have some case studies. Keep in mind, on a nationwide basis, less than 10% of office buildings can practically be converted into residential. The floor plates are wrong. It just doesn't work, doesn't pencil out. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. So there's a little bit of a thing about that. That might be something that is a risk factor in our outer year projections as we look and think about what do we do with obviously office buildings that are across our region that are market stressed at the moment and likely to stay that way for a long time. Whoops, I'm sorry, I went the wrong direction. There we go. So we looked at this. I'm going to just skip over this one. An estimated number of households you can kind of see. But one of the things that we have to apply to this is a vacancy rate. And our vacancy rate comes from a couple of different sources. We use for townhomes and condos, and we use the American Community Survey public use microsample data for those of you that are true data geeks. That microsample area is not actually just Falls Church. It includes pieces of Fairfax County, Northeast Fairfax County and Arlington North, but it seems to be a relatively reasonable section, apartments, et cetera. We are assuming that ownership units are basically 100% occupied. That based on market demand, if there's a unit out there, it's going to be available. And I don't see any reason, and I see nothing in our future that would suggest that that's different. So from that, then we want to take the enrollments of what kind of contribution rate does each household provide to the school district, and we have these numbers. I don't think I want to go into the specifics. I'll leave it to you. You have these data and charts in your packet, and you can see some of the distributions of it. But effectively, for our out projections, we look at 2 sets of numbers. One of them is that the most recent year is indicative of how things look, especially in the near term. The other is to go back and see what was happening prior to the pandemic, because as you well noted, we had that dip down. I think it's really interesting to see that certainly, as you might expect, the homeschooling went up that 1 year, but it's since kind of stabilized back, but the overall contribution rate is still below that 18 and 19 kind of year level. And quite frankly, I don't know where those kids are. To be honest with you, I don't know if they're being homeschooled. I don't know if they're in private school. That's probably some of it, but we just simply don't know for sure. I'm certainly not going to try to read that to you. My eyes aren't that good, but it's in the data. Let's just look at it from a chart. This is, the chart, the picture telling a story a lot better. So you've got 3 lines up here. That bottom line is the Weldon Cooper numbers with our adjustments. Weldon Cooper actually doesn't forecast out pre-K. So we took our numbers for pre-K and added it into Weldon Cooper, so at least these lines are apples to apples in that sense of what kids that we're talking about. The orangish line there in the middle is our projections based on your last year contribution rates and then looking at the development pipeline as we are seeing it, what we already know is coming, and what the planning department has in their future land use plans for approving in the future. That gray line above it, that's the interesting shock and the risk factor. That's that same projection on housing growth, but what if you have what we call in forecasting a step function where it goes right back to that 18 to 19 contribution levels? And that gap between those is roughly about 200 kids. and you think about start dividing that, how many more even though it gets spread out over the different grades, that starts talking about staffing levels. And that's the one that if you have that jump back, we have this thing that we've been told, the president has told us the pandemic is over. But we still see people behaving a little bit differently. If they return back to 2018, 2019 behaviors, you guys could see a sudden surge in the enrollments. Now, as you've heard, you've got capacity in terms of physical capacity. Facilities are not a problem, but we all know about the challenges of finding teachers. So with that, I want to go ahead and just close out with a couple of things and be able to, I'm happy to answer any questions. I will share one other thing to you. I was doing something on a Saturday when I was looking at these data a little bit. Keith was doing his work, and he had been working with Kristen. And just for giggles, I opened up one of these AI search engines and just said, how many kids are in the public school system in Falls Church? The answer I got from the brilliant AI that's going to solve all of our problems was 20,200. So only a decimal place. Now I have to figure out next spring when I'm teaching a data class, how to tell kids, forget what you're reading and still go look at the data. But with that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. I'll start with the question I have. So does your institute have a relationship with Weldon Cooper?
Other than every now and then we talk to each other, but we are as often competitors as we are collaborators. Okay. But understand the Weldon Cooper Center is actually what's called the state data center.
Right.
They are, they are
right,
the
because
official
it's through
recognized.
UVA.
So we use it. I think what was important about this one was the one of knowing that their processes are a little bit of more traditional forecasting methods. And it just, in a community of the size of Falls Church, when you guys are reshaping the urban form of your community with new housing development to meet the population growth demands, to be able to provide housing for the local workforce, it changes that nature, and those traditional methods of forecasting really become problematic.
Well, that was exactly my point. I remember when I first came onto the school board and we were doing our first budget meeting, and we have all kinds of, Kristen Michael gives us all kinds of information, and that was always the caveat when we got that Weldon Cooper projection, that it didn't take into account upcoming construction. And when I first came on the school board, that was in January of 2020, it wasn't really, we didn't have that much. Now, 4 years later, we have a ton of things coming on. So I'm really glad that we have you here and that you're giving us a much different, I guess, a more thorough picture of what's going on.
Yeah, I don't want to distract from what they do at all. I think the Weldon Cooper numbers, with their limitations,
right.
it's I think good information for you to have, but from a planning perspective, the challenge that you have in basically staff recruitment and retention, this is the big one that of just, are we ready to hire an extra 10 teachers next year?
Right.
Well, gee, most school districts are struggling to say, can I keep the ones I've got?
Right. No, that is we are in a critical teacher shortage. And not only that, I think, Dr. Noonan, thank you so much for those numbers. I know Ms. Tice was looking for those numbers about the capacity of our buildings, but as you said, and I know you'll agree, it's not just the capacity of our buildings, it's also buses, teachers, of course, but, buses, bus drivers, it's all of that. So, it's great that we have the capacity, but there's so much more that's going to cost money to educate and transport and feed our children. So,
and it'll be an interesting dance to sort of figure out as we move ahead too, because it is going to cost more to maintain the services that we have, and for us to be able to maintain those services, there may be a different level of need that comes forward. There are certainly ways around that. But it reduces the services that we provide. And right now, I think one of the things we do really well is we have a very relational classroom where our class numbers are staffed at a pretty low number. We've got great services with buses where we have a very small circle, a very small sort of ride dimension. And there are ways to save money by expanding, the distances students have to walk or making class sizes larger. And I don't think that that's who we are. And so I think being able to socialize that early or in the process than later is certainly helpful.
That's right. That's
If I
right.
might, ma'am, one
Yes,
thing that
please.
would add is that in our discussions with the city staff, they have indicated that they want us to basically extend our scope of work beyond, and we're doing other things for the city that include the commercial properties, employment forecast and all, but into the spring, bring us back and start looking at some of some of the assumptions, particularly about the new housing that's just coming online in 2024 especially. And we'll be kind of take another bite at it of, as we get more, will those buildings that are being projected to open in September and October next year, are they still on pace for that? And that's a really critical one for you next year. And it's not going to give you a lot of lead time, but if we can do some of that, and again, we're in communication with the developers, so just making sure that they're staying on target for their open dates. Because I very much expect that once they start selling, and they haven't, and one of the condo buildings has not opened up sales at all. They're kind of holding their powder dry a little bit on that. But as you well know, you guys accept students for people who are about to move into the area.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to know that too, because I think there have been, and I know our colleagues in city council, they're not putting up buildings, not giving some thought to this. But as you said, there's a certain formula that they've been using, and so it's really good to know, like, is this formula correct? Is this working? So when Founders Row is fully occupied, are we seeing the numbers we thought we would see? And if not, then we need to really look at these other, and just, as you said, Dr. Noonan, be better prepared. That maybe it's going to, these billions, what we thought, it's actually going to yield more students than our formula thought was going to yield. So that's what you're saying, that they're going to go back and see.
We'll take another look. We'll ask again. Like I said, we've been in touch with the developers, and they actually are, even not quickly returning our calls, but they return our calls, and they, and tell us, hey, we don't mind sharing this. They're being very cooperative in the sense of just sharing it. And so if we think about it, that in terms of, say, February or so, we talk to them, yep, we're still on that schedule, or no, we've had some delays, there's all sorts of permitting issues and stuff that go through, so now we're not thinking that we're going to be open until January. Well, that's going to be information you guys need to know with that chunk of students when they're likely to hit.
Right. And, the only other thing, Dr. Noonan, that I think about too is, it's all these sort of, I feel like intangibles, these things that don't, I think, jump out at us. I'm thinking that, as you get more and more students, it's harder to make the school play. It's harder to make a sports team, and so, those are going to be kind of the things, the student service side of things, or I guess the student life activities side of things, down, and this doesn't involve you, but down the road, do we add a new sports team on? Do we maybe do a third player music, that sort of thing? Because I think that's going to be some of the, we've always prided ourselves in being this little school system, and I think that mindset's going to have to change over the years as these numbers start to increase.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for saying that. You look at the out years, for example, at the high school, and we aren't going to grow so big that we'll lose that feel. I often joke that I was the principal of a high school that had more students in it than we have in the city of Falls Church. And at the same time, we still were able to maintain great relationships, and kids found their vein of activities and approaches. So I understand what you're saying. I think we're really committed to making sure that we maintain that small town feel. And our teachers do a really nice job of that, and our staff. But I understand what you're saying.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Silverman.
That just reminded me of something, Chair Downs. Would this not influx, but an increase in students, how does that affect our ability to change, and I don't know the right words to use here, but to change our ability to play different divisions at high school levels so that maybe our students wouldn't have to travel as far? Maybe there might be a benefit coming out of this too.
Yeah, every 2 years they do what's called R&R, which is it's realignment and I want to say review and realignment. That's not exactly right, but it's something in realignment where all of the divisions are looked at based on size. So if we do get to a bigger size, we may go up in division. So I think we're up for R&R probably next year. So if we grow by 100 or 200 students, it could potentially change sort of where we fall, but it would take quite a few students because we're still below 1,000 and at the high school. And so as long as we're still below 1,000, it's not until we get to 1,300, 1,400 at the high school that we begin to jump up to a different division.
So we're still pretty far away from that threshold.
I think so. I think we're still pretty far away. But there are also choices that we can make to play up. And that's a conversation for another day.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Silverman. Yes, Dr. Ortiz?
Thank you. I have two questions. The first has to do with this year's estimates. When we go back to the variance to actuals, you noted, Dr. Noonan, that the change is most pronounced at the elementary school. And I want to know if we've sussed out the source of that enrollment projection error, and not to say it was an error, I mean, it's a projection and whatnot, but like, is it, are those students coming from rental units? Is there a higher, whatever it is, what's the name of that, generation rate or whatever?
Generation ratio.
Yeah,
or
for those units, have we figured out like kind of the source of why that's the case, or did just more people move in and that's the way it is?
That's a great question. So two things. First is you may recall, and for maybe the good of the community, Weldon Cooper Center gave us 3 projections last year that we could look at. One was sort of a most conservative estimate to one that was maybe pre-pandemic estimate, and then there was one that was sort of up the middle. And we, as I recall, took the up the middle plan, thinking that that was probably where we would land. Obviously, that wasn't where we landed. We landed on the pre-pandemic line, more likely. But when we've gone through and looked at the student by dwelling unit, which is in your packet of information for this evening, what we found in the analysis is that most of the students this year are coming from single-family homes. The growth is coming from single-family homes. We don't anticipate, as was indicated, that that's going to happen every year over year, because we do have sort of a landlocked space where there's not a lot of opportunity to build more single-family homes. What we saw, I think, over the last year is perhaps more construction with some tear down of some smaller houses, larger houses going in. 3 kids generate from that house where maybe there weren't any before. So we are seeing that's where many of the students are coming from in our analysis. Our upcoming year, and I haven't actually given you the projection that we're looking at, but I will, and I'm not trying to hide the ball. I think we just haven't completely landed on it. But I think for our purposes of planning that we are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of over the 3-year span, including this year, and an additional 300 students over 3 years. So think about it in terms of 100 more students each year. We do anticipate that those students will come from the new mixed-use development. But again, we're ready for it.
Okay.
Space-wise.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Noonan.
Of course.
And then I'm looking, this is a question for the Stephen Fuller Institute. I noted that, going out to 2040, I mean, I don't know if we can really, I don't want to predict the future, but next year is something we have to plan for, and the year afterwards. And this gets, I know that you're working on this, Dr. Noonan, but I noted from your charts that, the year over year from the September enrollment for 2024 is plus 85, and then plus 146 again the next year. And then it levels out for a few years. Maybe it's a breather, maybe that'll come to pass, or maybe it won't. I just want to know, obviously every time whenever you do a projection, there's a kind of a band of uncertainty around that. Can you give a flavor of what the standard deviations are on that projection? Like it's plus 85 is the mean, plus or minus 10 or something like that? Like how tight is that projection of yours?
The methodology used here is not based on probabilistic statistics, so there is no margin of error or standard deviation calculated in this, and that's just because we are looking at the actual data in that one. And so these projections are they are assuming a fixed state going out, and then with the addition of the housing units that are in there. So this was not done as a regression analysis, and even that, if we use something like exponential smoothing, which is a standard forecasting technique, that is actually a non-probabilistic method and does not produce a confidence interval that as you would normally think about it. And in this case, quite honestly, I wouldn't, with a smaller community like Falls Church, this is the challenge that we have when we're doing housing market projections in this. We get to even the size of Arlington, and the numbers are just all over the place. Huge variations from month to month just based on what properties happen to sell, how many are available, and all of that. And so it would be, if we had, I will tell you this, without doing a math exercise on it, the variation and the potential would be pretty high for what we're doing, and it's just off of a small base. Remember, if you guys were a 20,000 student, we'd have a lot more confidence in what next year's numbers is, just because it would be a much more moving than a few number of students doesn't move the needle overall. Here, a relatively small group of students really moves the needle for you guys.
Okay, so just maybe to turn my question around, if Dr. Noonan and his team were trying to come up with ranges to plan towards, it really boils down to, when certain units complete, as well as the generation rates.
Yeah. The way we've expressed it in the numbers that we provided, and if you don't mind, I'll put that slide back up. Oh, I'm sorry, if you don't, that's okay. I don't want to cause trouble. If we go back just a couple of slides to that chart, what I would tell you is that we feel, whoops, no, not going to do it. That's okay. That gray line and the orange line that were up top, not the Weldon Cooper line, that's the bound. I think that's a pretty reasonable upper and lower bound. Maybe it tweaks down a little bit, but I think that is, and what's that doing is just saying we're allowing that probability of the possibility, I should say, of having these students that disappeared after 2018-19 reappear.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
The scary part of that is the step function that was indicated. The width between that is 200 students.
Yeah.
So I think to your point, Dr. Ortiz, you're right. I think that's why we need to be paying very close attention to what's coming online and when. And I think being able to come back later with the Stephen Fuller Institute to look at those yield ratios to determine whether or not they were right. Was the 0.21 yield ratio for those mini units right? Or was it more like a 0.15? Or was it a 0.3? I think that'll be really useful. And we'll stay, one of the things that Ms. Michael and I have worked really hard to do is we didn't have a staff reserve in the past, but about 3 years ago, we put a staffing reserve into the budget so that if there was a need, we could respond to it quickly. And that's kind of what I think we're going to have to do into the future.
Thank you, Dr. Ortiz. Yes, Ms. Tice.
Thank you, Dr. Noonan. You really you were reading my mind on the topic of the single-family dwelling homes and the turnover in them, and I'm wondering, 2/3 of our students roughly live in single-family dwellings, and as we all see, I'm sure in our neighborhoods, that these, small ramblers with empty nesters are being torn down, and big new construction with 3, 4, 5 kids are moving in. So how is that data incorporated into the projections? I know that must be.
It just winds up being a part of your current contribution rates that you see out of the single-family homes, and it's one of something that we need to see. The real issue there is how often. I mean, we can get, it's not the anecdote, but how many of those are happening, and then the pace of those, and some of that is, how much of it is, the permits are issued on it. So that's certainly something that we've thought about. It's a little bit harder in this market just because, at mortgage rates at 8% and a construction loan now is above 10%. So there is a little bit of market pressure pushing that down. Hopefully for all of us, we're not going to see those kind of mortgage rates continue for much longer, but they certainly are going to stay elevated. I think some of what you're seeing in this, as much as anything, is the lack of housing supply that we have. If you're a young family living in Falls Church, and your kids are aging up into school age and you've been in an apartment or a smaller condo, normally the process would be, we're going to move up into single-family home, a 2 or 3, 3 or 4 bedroom home. And simply, there's no inventory to speak of on average, right? And so I think that we're seeing some capping of what's going to happen just because there's not a lot of movement. And then for now, you talk about people that have those homes, say an empty nester who is thinking about moving. Are they going to want to move someplace if it's more expensive or something? And all they sell out here, but do they have to take on a mortgage? I'm not sure. Of course, the other factor is right now part of the reason housing units are the inventory has dropped so much. Who wants to leave a 3% mortgage?
Right. No, I understand that. When we look at 25 years of projections, I have 3 houses on my street, the 3 Ramblers being torn down right now with all the signs and construction going. So how does that factor in for the long term? I mean, when it says only 1 or 2 coming on per year.
Right. And it will over time, it will make that contribution rate for that particular housing type. It will cause it to increase, and I think it will matter. I don't think it's going to be enough of a jump yet to worry about. And when I'm talking about the near term, I do not see that conversion rate getting enough that it says, oh, instead of needing a new high school in 2040, we need one in 2030. It's not going to be that kind of numbers.
Oh, sure.
Ms. Tice, can I jump on that question? And this is for Dr. Noon. So when your predecessor, when I was in a meeting, a long time ago, it was said to me that one of the ways to look at that is if you look at the number of lots in the city where the land is worth more than the houses, and that's where you figure out those are your tear downs. So I don't know, do we do any kind of keeping up with those numbers?
We do keep up with those numbers, and I asked for it last year from the general government, and I did get some information. We can go back and look at it again. I think the challenge that we're going to face picking up on this conversation is we're seeing 3 and 4 bedroom houses being torn down. There are 2 on the walk that I take with my dog every day, where these are houses when we were in the market, I was like, oh, I wish that was on the market. We would have moved in there, and now somebody bought it and they're tearing it down. So I think that's going to be a challenge for us as well going forward. The good news there is if it's a 3 or 4 bedroom that probably generated 2 or 3 kids, and if they put another 2 or 3 bedroom or 4 bedroom on there or 5 bedroom on there, probably the generation's pretty close. But we were able to get an inventory. And I don't know necessarily, Chair Downs, if it was exactly what you're asking for, where the house was worth less than the property. But what we were able to get was an inventory of those sort of traditional brick Cape Cods and how many of those were left that potentially could be taken down. So we can certainly look into it.
It'd be interesting, I think, to follow. Thank you. Ms. Tyson, I jumped in. Did you have any other? Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, this is our statistics guy right here. So he seems satisfied. So that's kudos to you. So, anyone else?
I would just like to make one
Yes,
last
please,
comment.
please.
And since Kristen is on here, this is really
yes.
Kristen's presentation this evening. So thank you so much for pulling this together, Ms. Michael. Unfortunately, she has a cough, so I drew the straw tonight and got to present Kristen's work. So thank you for pulling it all together, Kristen.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Noon. I was remiss, Ms. Michael, in not thanking you because I heard that you've worked really hard on this, as you always do. So thank you so much for your work on this. And Dr. Dimick, are you good? Any questions from you?
I guess if I could ask one question, this is perhaps more for Dr. Noonan. Could you remind us, is it next, we have to decide on a number before you build the budget. Am I remembering that correctly? And my guess is that is before we would have any sort of updated information in the new year from what is happening with the new buildings.
That is correct. We will land on a number by our December 4th date with our counterparts, and we're going to use the data that's been shared with you tonight to determine what that is. The good news is it's a projection. It's not this is exactly how many kids are going to come, but it does give us a good sense of what things are going to look like based on the inventory that's coming online.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. We're happy that you skipped the class and come and presented to us. It's very informative, and I know we were all waiting anxiously or with great anticipation for this presentation. So thank you very much. It was really helpful for all of us, especially as we get ready for budget season. Thank you. And Ms. Michael, thank you again for all that work I know you did behind the scenes, and we hope you feel better.